Hi, I'm Sophie, and today's story, it's one of loyalty, sacrifice, and the shocking moment you realize the people you love may only love what you do for them. Let me introduce you to Lena. She's 29 now, but this story began 2 years ago when her life took a sharp and unexpected turn. Back then, Lena was living on her own in a modest one-bedroom apartment, working as a software developer. Her income was steady, about $85,000 a year, and she was enjoying the sweet independence of early adulthood. She had her space, her routines, and the kind of quiet peace you don't truly appreciate until it's gone. Then came that phone call. "Lena, we need to talk," her mom said. Her voice was heavy, tired. "Can you come over tonight?" When Lena arrived at her parents' house, the mood was grim. Her dad, just 58, looked 10 years older, slumped over the kitchen table littered with paperwork. Her mom was wringing her hands, a nervous habit Lena remembered from childhood. "What's going on?" she asked, already dreading the answer. Her dad cleared his throat. "I had to quit last month. My back's gone. Construction's off the table. I've been looking, but nothing pays enough." Then her mother jumped in, her voice small. "We're bringing in maybe $1,200 a month, but the mortgage is $1,800. They were sinking, and fast. Lena felt the floor drop out beneath her. That house, the one with the dented fridge, the old recliner, the backyard where she learned to ride her bike, was more than a structure. It was home. And now it was on the line. So without hesitation, she offered to move back in and help. She gave up her lease, packed up her things, and moved back into her childhood bedroom. At first, it felt strange sleeping under the same ceiling where she'd once stayed up studying for finals and writing in her diary. But she adjusted. She set up her workstation in the corner, got a solid internet connection, and reminded herself, it's only temporary. What her family didn't realize was that Lena's financial situation was stronger than it looked. Sure, her base salary covered the basics: mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas, insurance. But what really gave her breathing room were the bonuses. Every time one of her programs was bought by a major tech firm, she got a cut. And we're not talking small change. Some months she brought in an extra $10,000, sometimes even $15,000. She wasn't just comfortable. She was quietly thriving. But she told no one. Not her parents, not her brother Ethan, who lived across town with his wife Tracy and their 2 kids, because Lena wasn't naive. She loved her family, sure, but she wasn't blind to their habits. If they knew about the extra money, they'd find a dozen ways to spend it before she could blink. Ethan was always calling with new emergencies. "Lena, Tommy needs new cleats. Can you spot us $500? "Lena, Tracy wants to redo the kitchen. Just a little help." "Lena, Tracy's mom's in the hospital. We're short on the deductible." She helped when she could, from her regular salary. But every bonus check, straight into a separate savings account. In 2 years, that secret fund had grown to nearly $180,000. Her plan was simple: buy a condo downtown and finally start a life that was hers. No strings attached, but life at home was only going to get messier. But of course, life isn't always smooth sailing, especially not when family dynamics come knocking at your peace. Even as I quietly built up nearly $180,000 in savings toward a future condo, there was one part of my week I came to dread like clockwork: Sunday dinner. It was a family tradition, the kind that used to feel warm and comforting growing up. But now, it was a stage, and I was the unwilling audience to Tracy's weekly performance. Every Sunday, without fail, Ethan and Tracy would show up right at 4 p.m. Their 2 kids, 8-year-old Tommy and 6-year-old Emma, would burst through the front door like a Category 5 hurricane, while Tracy strutted in behind them, already surveying the room like she owned it. And then the comments would start. "Lena, is that the same shirt you wore last week?" She'd sneer, her eyes scanning me like a bargain bin. "You dress like you're still in high school. Ever think about upgrading your closet?" Ethan would laugh like it was harmless teasing. "She's just looking out for you, sis. Tracy's got a good eye for fashion." Right, a good eye funded by the money I had lent them. I'd sit across the table watching Tracy flaunt her new designer outfits, the same outfits she proudly described as investment pieces, while I silently calculated how much of my hard-earned salary had gone into their credit card payments. She'd toss her hair, talk about how a woman needs to project success to attract success, all while sipping wine she brought like it was a gift, when I knew it had come from my wallet. The hypocrisy stung, but I said nothing. Instead, I'd retreat upstairs after dinner, claiming I had coding deadlines or client meetings. Truthfully, I just needed to breathe. As I shut the door, I could still hear Tracy's voice echoing up the stairs. There she goes again, hiding in her little cave. She'll never grow up living like that. But I was growing, just not in the way she could understand. I was building something real, quietly, strategically. While Tracy invested in handbags and gossip, I was investing in freedom. I kept adding to my down payment fund, one bonus at a time, and during the week, things were calm, almost peaceful. Most mornings, I'd brew a fresh pot of coffee, check my email, and dive into my work. My dad would be in his recliner watching the morning news, usually with the volume up too high, and Mom would be rushing around getting ready for her part-time shift at the grocery store. We had our rhythm, and for the most part, it worked. Evenings were slow and simple. We'd eat dinner together, meatloaf, pot roast, spaghetti, the kind of meals that felt like home. I cherished those dinners. For a little while, it felt like family again. But Sunday always returned. The moment that minivan pulled into the driveway, my stomach would tighten. Tommy and Emma would tear through the house, knocking things over and screaming, while Tracy made herself comfortable on the living room couch, spewing stories about yoga, shopping, and whatever neighborhood drama was unfolding that week. Meanwhile, Ethan would sip a beer with Dad in the kitchen, talking about sports or how unfair his job was. "He's working so hard," Tracy would announce loudly. "He really deserves a promotion." I'd bite my tongue, remembering all the times Ethan had called me begging for help because he'd missed another deadline or gotten passed up for a bonus. He was family, sure, but reliable? Not exactly. And just when I thought I'd heard it all, Tracy would offer up her unsolicited life advice. "You know, Lena," she'd begin with a condescending smile, "you really should start dating. Maybe think about settling down, having a family. You're not getting any younger." What she didn't know, what none of them understood, was that I was building a future, just not one that needed her approval. I had a career I loved, independence I'd fought hard for, and a financial plan that didn't involve handouts or high heels. I didn't need Tracy's validation or Ethan's pity. What I needed, more than anything, was space. And soon, I'd have it. After weeks of holding it all together, I finally needed a break. The noise, the passive-aggressive digs, the way I felt like a stranger in my own home. It was all piling up. So when my best friend Natalie invited me to her country house for the weekend, I didn't hesitate. 2 nights of peace, fresh air, and no Tracy? That sounded like heaven. But heaven ended the moment I pulled back into the driveway. Sunday evening. There were too many cars parked out front, more than usual, and every light in the house was on. My stomach twisted. I climbed out of the car, still holding my overnight bag, and noticed toys, plastic dinosaurs, a deflated soccer ball, puzzle pieces, scattered across the porch. I opened the front door and was immediately hit by the sound of chaos. Tommy and Emma were running wild through the living room, yelling and laughing as if they were at a playground. Ethan was halfway up the stairs with a moving box in his arms. And there, in the middle of it all, was Tracy, standing with one hand on her hip, directing everything like she was moving into a newly purchased vacation home. "What's going on?" I asked, stunned, standing in the doorway. Everyone froze. My parents emerged from the kitchen, their expressions tight with guilt. Ethan set down his box and gave me a sheepish grin. "Hey, sis, so, change of plans. I lost my job and we can't afford rent anymore. We're staying here for a while." I looked around. The boxes, the furniture, they weren't just crashing for a night. This was a full-on takeover. "Just temporarily," Ethan added quickly, "until I get back on my feet." Then Tracy waltzed over with that artificial smile that made my skin crawl. "We so appreciate you letting us stay here," she said as if I'd actually agreed. "Of course, we'll need to rearrange the sleeping setup. Your room is perfect for the kids, and you can take the small one at the end of the hall." I blinked. Number I work from home. I need my desk, my computer, my setup, and strong internet. Tracy's smile tightened. "Well, the children's needs should come first." "I'm the one paying the mortgage and the bills," I said, trying to stay calm. "This is my space too." Tracy crossed her arms. "That doesn't mean you get to be selfish about a bedroom. We're family." "Family that never asked if I was okay with house guests," I replied. Tracy huffed. "Fine, keep your precious room, but don't expect gratitude when you can't even be considerate to people in need." I turned and walked upstairs, closing the door behind me before I said something I'd regret. But that night marked the beginning of what I now call the invasion. From that moment on, my life became a nightmare. The once quiet house turned into a circus. Tommy and Emma ran through the halls, screaming, knocking over everything in sight. Ethan spent his days sprawled on the couch, half watching sports and half-heartedly scrolling job boards. "How's the search going?" I asked one morning after Tommy kicked a ball against the wall outside my room for 20 straight minutes. Ethan didn't even look up. "Still looking. The market's brutal." Meanwhile, Tracy treated the place like a resort. She'd make loud phone calls in the living room, leave dishes in the sink, and talk loudly on speakerphone while I was on Zoom calls with clients. I tried to be reasonable. "Can you keep the kids a bit quieter during my work hours?" I asked Ethan gently one morning. "They're just being kids," he replied without looking up. "You wouldn't understand. You don't have any." I went to my parents. "I'm not asking for silence," I told them. "Just a little respect so I can do my job." "You're overreacting, honey," Mom said. "Children need to play." And somehow, it only got worse. After every conversation, it was like Tracy encouraged the kids to be more disruptive, almost like she wanted to prove a point. And then one afternoon, after running errands, I came home to find my internet wasn't working. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no access. I rushed to my room and froze. My Ethernet cable had been cleanly snipped in half. I held the severed wire in my hands, my heart pounding, not just with frustration, but with something deeper. This wasn't just noise or chaos anymore. This was war. I stood there in my room, staring at the cleanly cut Ethernet cable like it was a crime scene. Because in a way, it was. I picked up both ends of the wire. It hadn't been chewed or pulled loose. It had been deliberately snipped, clean, straight through. No hesitation. Someone had taken scissors to the one tool that allowed me to do my job. I stormed downstairs, the wire in my hand like Exhibit A. "Who did this?" I snapped, holding it up for all to see. Tracy was lounging on the couch, painting her nails like she didn't have a care in the world. She glanced at the cable, then smirked. "Oh, that," she said casually. "Tommy must have gotten into your room. He was playing with scissors earlier. Kids will be kids." I felt the anger surge in my chest. This isn't a joke, Tracy. I have a deadline tomorrow. This is how I work. She shrugged. Then maybe you should keep your door locked if your precious equipment is that important. I clenched my jaw. Maybe you should watch your kid and teach him not to destroy other people's property. That's when the act dropped. Tracy stood up, her smile gone, eyes narrowed like a warning. Don't you dare tell me how to raise my children. You have no idea what it's like to be a parent. I took a deep breath. You're right, I don't. But I do know what respect looks like, and this isn't it. He's 6, she snapped. He doesn't understand your tech stuff. But you're not 6, I shot back. And you should understand that cutting a wire isn't an accident. It's destruction. That's when Ethan appeared in the doorway, followed by my parents, all looking like I was the one making a scene. I turned to them, explaining what had happened, hoping, just hoping, they'd finally have my back. But Ethan just sighed. Look, I'm sorry about your internet, sis. But Tracy's right. You don't have kids. You don't get how hard it is to watch them 24/7. I'm not asking you to watch them every second, I replied, struggling to stay calm. I'm asking you to teach them boundaries. My room is not a playground. Boys his age are just naturally curious, Mom chimed in. You used to get into everything too, remember? Sure, I said. But I didn't go around cutting Ethernet cables with scissors. Dad gave a small nod. You're being too harsh, Lena. It's just a wire. You can buy another one. That was the moment the floor gave out beneath me. The people I had been paying for, cooking for, covering bills for, they couldn't even side with me over a clearly damaged piece of my livelihood. I was the one keeping this roof over their heads, and now I was being treated like an inconvenience. After that, everything changed. My parents barely looked at me. Ethan avoided conversation entirely. Tracy? She strutted around the house with a smugness that told me she thought she'd won some silent war. The house felt colder, not physically, but emotionally, like all the warmth had been drained and replaced with resentment. I kept to myself, working in my room, headphones on to block out the noise. I tried to remind myself that this was still temporary, but deep down, I knew better. I had become a permanent doormat, and they had no intention of stepping off. Then came the call. One of my latest programs had sold to a major tech firm, and the bonus was huge, nearly $60,000. It brought my total savings to $240,000. Enough to finally walk away. For months, I'd been working quietly with Jake Morgan, a friend from college who'd gone into real estate. I'd asked him to keep an eye out for something downtown, something modern and peaceful, and now he had found it. I think I've got the one, he said. 2-bedroom condo, great building, tons of natural light. And get this, there's a gym, no shared walls, and a designated office space. I went to see it that same afternoon. Hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows. A quiet 3rd-floor unit that felt like a fresh start. It was everything I'd dreamed of. And, most importantly, no screaming. I didn't need to sleep on it. The moment I stepped into that downtown condo, I knew it was mine. Hardwood floors that gleamed under natural light. A quiet building with a gym on the 1st floor. And, most importantly, a dedicated home office with 0 toy cars, screaming kids, or Tracy in sight. I'll take it, I told Jake, not even waiting for the full tour. The paperwork moved fast. I put down $100,000 from my savings and had no trouble securing the mortgage. My credit score was excellent, my income stable, and I was buying well within my means. 2 weeks later, I had a pen in my hand and closing papers in front of me. Just like that, I was a homeowner. I held the keys in my hand, standing on the threshold of freedom, but I didn't tell my family, not yet. I wanted an exit plan in place, something clean, quiet, and final. And then fate handed me the perfect opportunity. Lena, my boss Michelle called. There's a developers conference in Seattle. 2 weeks, all expenses paid. Some of the biggest names in tech will be there. I think it's time you got out and reconnected. I looked around my room. Emma was crying somewhere down the hall. Tommy was hammering a toy into the wall. Tracy's voice floated up from downstairs, probably complaining about the laundry detergent I bought. 2 weeks away, I said. I'll take it. I told my parents and Ethan I was heading out of town for work. Their response? A shrug. No questions about the trip. No curiosity about the conference. No good luck or we'll miss you. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. Seattle was everything I needed and more. I networked with brilliant people, learned from industry leaders, and stayed in a quiet hotel with room service and blackout curtains. For the first time in months, I remembered who I was outside of that dysfunctional house. And the strangest part? I never called home, and they never called me. 2 weeks passed in a blink. I landed at the airport, grabbed a taxi, and headed back to what I thought would be another stretch of survival under my parents' roof, at least until I moved into my new condo. But the moment the taxi turned into the driveway, I knew something was off. There were black trash bags scattered across the front lawn. At first I thought it was just garbage day, but as I stepped closer, my heart dropped. Those weren't trash bags. They were my belongings. Clothes, books, personal items, all stuffed into plastic bags and dumped like yesterday's leftovers. I walked up to the door, suitcase in hand, heart racing. I knocked hard. Voices inside, footsteps. The door opened, and there they were, Mom, Dad, Ethan, and of course Tracy. All lined up like they were waiting for a confrontation, but none of them looked surprised. If anything, they looked smug. "What is this?" I asked, pointing to the bags. Mom shifted awkwardly. But Tracy, she stepped forward with that same saccharine smile I'd grown to loathe. "We made a few changes while you were away," she said. "The kids needed more room, so we turned your bedroom into a playroom." "You what?" "They're growing," Mom added, still not meeting my eyes. "They need space to play safely." "And don't worry," Dad said, like he was offering me a gift. "We cleaned up the basement for you. It's actually not that bad now." I knew that basement, damp, dark, and smelling like wet drywall, 1 bar of cell service on a good day. "It's got a bed and everything," Tracy added, practically glowing. "But of course, if you don't like the arrangement, you're always free to find your own place. You are 29 after all." I looked at my parents. They didn't defend me. They didn't thank me. They didn't even look at me. And that's when something inside me shifted. I smiled. A real, honest-to-God smile. "You know what?" I said cheerfully, my voice calm. "You're absolutely right, Tracy." "Find my own place," I repeated, still smiling. "But I'm curious. How exactly are you planning to pay the mortgage without my help?" Ethan puffed out his chest a bit, like he'd been waiting for the question. "Actually, I just landed a new job last week," he said, sounding proud. "Good salary, too. We'll be fine without your money." That was the moment I'd been waiting for. A wave of relief rushed through me, cool, clean, liberating. I didn't even try to hide the joy on my face. "That's wonderful news," I said brightly. "I'm genuinely happy for all of you." I looked them each in the eye. "Well then, I guess this works out perfectly. I'm leaving." They all just stood there, blinking like I'd spoken in another language. I could almost see the confusion unraveling across their faces. They'd expected me to cry, to beg, to fight for my place in a house that hadn't felt like home in a long time. Instead, I smiled wider, like someone walking out of a locked room and into open air. Tracy's grin stretched tighter. Good. It's about time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. My parents still said nothing. Not a protest, not a thank you. Just silence. Great, I said, turning toward the driveway. So glad we're all in agreement. The door slammed behind me. No hug, no goodbye, no acknowledgement of the thousands I'd spent, or the peace I'd sacrificed for 2 years to keep that roof over their heads. Fine, let them slam doors. I pulled out my phone and called the moving company I'd already researched weeks ago. Hi, I said, calm as ever. I need a truck and a crew to move some boxes across town. How soon do you need us? The dispatcher asked. How about 2 hours? We can do that. Perfect. While I waited, I sat in my car and dialed Jake. I'm moving in today, I told him, smiling as I watched the late afternoon sun dip behind the trees. Everything's lined up. Next, I called the utility companies to switch the accounts into my name. Electric, water, internet, gas. Piece by piece, I severed the last cords tying me to that toxic household. When the movers arrived, it took under an hour to pack my life into the back of their truck. One small moving truck. That's all it took to carry every piece of me that had survived the chaos. Where to? One of the movers asked. I handed him the address of my new condo and followed them in my car, heart racing, not with fear, but with anticipation. As I stepped through the door of my 3rd-floor unit, watching the movers bring in the last of my boxes, I felt lighter than I had in years. I was free. No more Tracy, no more screaming kids, no more guilt trips or emotional blackmail disguised as family loyalty. My new home was everything I'd dreamed of, quiet, bright, and completely mine. My office was already set up with a real desk, high-speed internet, and 0 interruptions. I blocked every family number in my phone. Then I logged into my accounts and canceled every payment I had been making on their behalf. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, all of it. In the months that followed, I poured myself into work. Without the constant stress and noise, I rediscovered joy in my career. I took on new clients, pushed myself creatively, and began sleeping deeply for the first time in what felt like forever. I joined the gym downstairs. I started cooking full meals again, not out of obligation, but because I enjoyed it. I even went on a few dates. And guess what? My savings began to grow, fast. Without 4 extra mouths to feed, I was saving nearly $3,000 a month. For the first time in years, I had space, freedom, control. I started looking at investment opportunities, planning vacations, maybe even upgrading to a larger place in the future. Life was good. Really good. Until one evening, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole, and my stomach sank. There they were, Mom, Dad, Ethan, and Tracy, standing awkwardly in the hallway of my peaceful building like a ghost from a past I'd buried. When I opened the door, I didn't say a word. I didn't step back or invite them in. I just stared. All 4 of them stood there in my hallway. My mom, Dad, Ethan, and Tracy, shifting uncomfortably, like kids caught sneaking out past curfew. How did you find me? I asked, my voice steady. Natalie told us, Mom said quietly, clearly embarrassed. Of course she did. I made a mental note to have a very different kind of conversation with Natalie about the meaning of privacy. What do you want? I asked, this time with a sharper edge. Before anyone could answer, Tracy brushed past me without permission and walked right into my apartment, scanning the space like a real estate agent casing a property. Nice place, she said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. Must cost a fortune. The others followed her inside without hesitation, as if I had no say in it. Suddenly, the peace I had worked so hard to build was under siege again. I'll ask one more time, I said, standing firm near the door. What do you want? Ethan shifted awkwardly. Well, I lost my job again. I didn't flinch. Of course he had. Dad cleared his throat. And we're falling behind on the mortgage. If things don't turn around, the bank could take the house. I almost laughed. It was so predictable I could have written the script myself. Let me guess, I said. You want me to start paying your bills again? We're family, Mom said quickly, her voice trembling. We help each other. Help each other? I repeated. Tell me, when exactly have any of you ever helped me? Dad tried to soften the tension. Lena, look, I know things got tense before, but maybe we could talk this out. Maybe you could move back in and help us get back on our feet. You mean the basement, right? I said coldly. You want me to move back into the same basement you threw me into while you gave my room to your golden grandchildren? No one answered. We've been talking, Mom said hesitantly. If the house goes into foreclosure, well, we'd need somewhere to go. I blinked. Excuse me? Tracy, ever the bold one, chimed in with a smirk. We'd have to move in here. I mean, where else would we go? You've got the space. That was it. I started laughing. A deep, genuine belly laugh. The kind that comes from the kind of disbelief you just can't make up. You actually think I'd let you live here? I said once I could breathe. After you tossed my belongings out like trash and told me to go live in a moldy basement. That was different, Ethan mumbled. You're right, I said. It was different. It was the moment I realized exactly how little I meant to you. Tears welled up in Mom's eyes. Lena, please. We're desperate. And I wasn't? I shot back. I was working full time, paying your mortgage, feeding your family, and you couldn't even offer me basic decency. Dad shook his head. We never said you weren't important. You didn't have to say it, I interrupted. You showed me every day, with your silence, with Tracy's constant insults, with those kids tearing up my room, with your refusal to stand up for me while I paid for your life. We were grateful, Mom whispered. No, I said, you were entitled, and there's a big difference. Tracy, finally dropping the act, rolled her eyes. You're exactly what I always said you were. Bitter, selfish, no sense of family. You only care about yourself. You're absolutely right, I said, calm and clear. I don't understand your version of family, where one person gives everything and gets trampled in return. I walked to the door and opened it wide. I want all of you to leave. Lena, wait, Ethan pleaded. Can't we just talk this through? We are talking, I said, and the answer is no. I'm not paying your mortgage. I'm not letting you move in. I'm not helping any of you with a single dime, ever again. Mom looked crushed. But we're family. Real family doesn't treat someone the way you treated me. No one moved, so I stared them down. Now get out. They left, angrily, of course. Tracy hurled insults all the way to the elevator. Ethan muttered something about how I'd regret this. My parents didn't say a word. They just looked tired, broken. I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. The next few weeks were a flurry of blocked numbers, text messages from unknown senders, emails begging for money, veiled threats about showing up again. I blocked every single one. 3 months later, I heard through a mutual friend that the house had officially gone into foreclosure. My parents were living in a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. Ethan and Tracy, they'd moved in with her parents, which was deliciously ironic, considering Tracy had always bragged about how much she despised her mother. And me? I felt nothing. No guilt, no sorrow, just relief. Since that day, my life has only gone uphill. I got promoted at work. I started dating someone who truly values and respects me. I traveled to 3 countries. I bought the car I'd always wanted. I even started mentoring younger women in tech. I finally understood what healthy relationships looked like. My boyfriend appreciates everything I do and shows it. My friends thank me when I help them, and they mean it. Sometimes I do wonder if my family ever reflects on how differently things might have turned out, if they'd just shown me the tiniest shred of respect, if Tracy had kept her mouth shut, if Ethan had actually gotten off the couch, if my parents had stood up for me. But then I remind myself, some people will take everything you give them and still ask for more. Some people see kindness as weakness and generosity as obligation, and those aren't people I ever want in my life again. Not now. Not ever. Sometimes the people you sacrifice for are the ones who feel most entitled. Lena's journey is a powerful reminder that love without boundaries is often mistaken for obligation. Many of us, especially in middle age, know what it means to put others first. Whether it's aging parents, struggling siblings, or ungrateful in-laws. We give time, money, emotional energy, hoping it will be met with appreciation. But, as Lena learned, loyalty without respect becomes servitude. She worked hard, gave generously, and held her tongue while her family dismissed, disrespected, and exploited her. The turning point wasn't a dramatic betrayal. It was the quiet realization that she was being used. That's a lesson many of us overlook. When giving becomes expected, not appreciated, it's time to step back. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. You can't pour from an empty cup, and no amount of money or sacrifice will fix a family that refuses to value you. In the end, Lena reclaimed her peace, not with revenge, but with clarity. She walked away, not because she stopped loving, but because she started loving herself. And maybe that's the real lesson. The bravest thing you can do is stop apologizing for putting yourself first.